All right, we're going.
I'm looking it up. Hold on. I found him. Yeah.
All right.
All right. Week 16 for the Moops. Pretty awful week. 1-4. We were 0-4 going into the Sunday night game. Giants and Redskins.
Commanders.
Oh God, Jesus. Sorry. Apologies to those offended. Probably as bad a position as you can be in. 0-4 going into the Sunday night game. We had missed on the Ravens Saturday. And then lost that Jets Lions game. We had the Jets. It was a pick 'em. Close game. Just what was it, like their third string tight end ripped off a long touchdown on a 4th and 1.
Yeah.
And that kind of sealed our fate. Eagles, Bears. Eagles were kind of hovering around the number the whole time. They got outside the number, so we were covering, and then the Bears scored a touchdown late. Little bit of a backdoor, not a hard backdoor, but they did get inside the number late. Cardinals pick, as bad a set of circumstances as you could ask for. We're already going into, we knew we had Colt McCoy, obviously, as the quarterback, but then he gets hurt. And then they have to go to Trace McSorley, and it just, that was as bad as that could have been. Panthers, I was a little surprised how flat they kind of looked against the Steelers. Just a bad week. Bad week. Any thoughts?
Yeah. I think that, something like the Ravens, they lost by 10, but it was one of those where Justin Tucker missed 2 field goals. I think they got stopped, if not in the red zone, around the red zone a couple times on 4th down. So it's like that was one of those that it really could have and should have gone our way. Just some bad luck there. I think kind of the same thing with the Jets game. We were right there on it. It was a close back and forth game, but it's one of those where, we just ended up on the wrong side of the coin there. Cardinals even, Cardinals were up at half. I think, losing Colt McCoy definitely did hurt. McSorley's not great, running an offense. And, he was like a 6th-round pick. He's bounced around a little bit already in his young career. So it's one of those where, I think if we knew that, of course, we'd be staying off of it. And then the Giants was a great one. I think, I was texting you about it earlier in the week, but I think the Panthers pick was just a miss by us. I think it's one of those where, just like when we took the Panthers against the Falcons weeks ago, our rationale was pretty much the Falcons should not be favorites against anybody.
Yeah.
Therefore, you should fade them. I think that was kind of the same situation last week. And, we were talking about how we like to kind of just ride these teams that seem to be good to us. But I think it's one of those. And at this point, it's something that we need to look. We could start trying to catch it now, but I think it's more of a note for next year where we can ride these teams, but we also have to be more willing to maybe take a step back and say, all right, they can't cover every single week. That good stretch has to come to an end at some point. And I think we just have to get a little bit better at maybe identifying that, because we're good at finding the teams to go on the runs. But it's like, I think that when your objective is to kind of ride them until the wheels fall off, I think it's kind of a bad mentality to have, saying, at some point they're going to burn us. So I think it's one of those where it's just better to be a week early than a week late. And, maybe that should have been a pass for us. Or maybe it's one of those where, like how I've said about this year with the Broncos, where I feel like I have a good read on the Broncos games. That doesn't mean that I feel like I'm good at picking the Broncos to cover. It means that I feel like I know when the Broncos are going to cover and when they're going to shit the bed, and vice versa, everything like that. So I think that's one of those where, we need to get good at finding these teams, which I think we are, but we also need to understand, all right, no, this is a spot that we typically should go against. And it's one of those, but that's just one game. It's not, we've been having a pretty bad season overall. So
yeah, I think generally overall, look, like we're 10 games under 500, so it's not like we're on the cusp and got fucked, but we've definitely even the way you were describing that Ravens game where stopped twice inside the 10, whether it was a turnover or a turnover on downs, missing field goals. Like you look at all the stats, and like, the stats would indicate that the Ravens, either won that game or would have covered, but
Yeah.
just some bad luck scenarios. And it definitely has felt like for us this year that we've just been on the wrong side of all of those scenarios. Just like time and time again, where it's like this happened, it just feels like there haven't been many instances that I can think of where, we've been on the right side of that, where we were on the Browns and had the good fortune of, even thinking about like what was it, that Packers Lions game earlier this year, riding the Rodgers trend against the Lions. And then what did he throw? 3 picks inside the 5?
Yeah.
Shit like that.
Yeah.
It just seems like it's been a trend for us of just being on the wrong side of those occurrences.
Yeah. Like, I mean, I don't even know if there's been 5 games this year where we've just been so off on our read. Like, I remember the Cardinals game in week 1 when we took them over the Chiefs. I'd say, I'd say like a game like the Panthers one last week where we were just kind of blindly taking them, and then we should have stepped back. And like I said, just said, you know what, we should be feeling really strange about the Panthers being favorites, that type of thing. But
Yeah.
it's like I feel like it's only a small handful of games where we've really been off the mark like that. I think everything else has been a pretty good read, and then just a bad bounce here and there that hasn't gone our way.
Yeah.
And we've talked about it all season where it feels like a lot of the games we don't take, we've been pretty spot on with our reads. And
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard, it's always hindsight too.
Yeah.
We pick our 5 for a reason. Those are the ones that we feel the best about. So it's not really like we can't really kick ourselves that much.
Yeah.
But I mean, I think for the most part, our reads are there, and it's just one of those where, hopefully moving forward, and, I'd say maybe more for next year, so he get a full season of good luck. Hopefully water just finds its level, and, we have a
Right.
full season of those bounces instead of a full season of them going against us.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. All right, let's get into before we get into the slate, any kind of big notes, trends, anything you were
Just
seeing?
my typical home dog report. We got 6 of them, so we got Panthers plus 2.5, Pats plus 3, Bears plus 8.5, Rams plus 2.5, Cardinals plus 7.5, and Colts plus 4.5.
Okay.
Do you have our records, by the way?
Yes. Super contest, 31, 41, and 3, 32.5 points. Circa, we are 30, 41, and 4 for 32 points.
Cool.
All right. Let's get into it. First game, Vikings and Giants. Vikings are home. They're laying 4. A couple notes I had: Giants 10-4 against the spread. Obviously, a nice bounce back last week for the cover, which we had. Got a little help at the end. I mean, they were in the cover position there at the end, but obviously got some help there with Heineke not being able to get in, and then the whole bullshit with what's that receiver's name? I'm blanking on his name now.
Terry McLaurin.
Terry McLaurin. The ref kind of fucking him.
I will
But
say there's been a deeper dive.
yeah,
I actually think the ref is in the clear.
you think you think like he didn't do anything wrong?
Yeah, because if you look back on it, Terry was actually so far off the line. So his story is not necessarily wrong. He checked with the ref. The ref said move up. But Terry was so far back that he moved up like an inch, and he was still so far
He didn't
off.
do that enough.
And
Yeah.
then he never actually looked back. He just kind of gave the ref a thumbs up. He never actually checked. So it actually is Terry McLaurin's fault. Like, I guess maybe the ref could have been, like, hey, all that, but that's really not his job.
Yeah, but at the same time, it's like that play is about to happen too. It's like,
Yeah.
I mean, he can't. He's also waiting. He's got to watch the stat.
Yeah. So it's like, I mean, but also at the same time, I mean, and, we are complaining, but, we are complaining about things going our way. It was a total ref show that game. I mean, what was it? It was the play in the end zone, right? Shouldn't have been
Oh
a
yeah,
pretty,
and then Curtis Samuel,
yeah.
guys like bugging him.
Yeah.
I mean, they still would have had to get the 2-point conversion. Then it would have gone to OT. And the Giants were getting points. So it was one of those situations as I was watching the Commanders get down, inside the 10 there. I'm thinking to myself, they're going to score, they're going to get the 2-point conversion, and then they're going to rip off a TD, and we're not going to get the cover. I was like, this is how this goes. That's the story that's written for us.
Yeah.
Obviously, it didn't happen. Yeah, we got some luck, but at the same time, I mean, the Giants were in a strong cover position anyway,
Yeah.
so it's not like it pulled us out of the depths of not covering. Anyway, all that to say, let's get back to the game at hand, which is the Vikings and Giants. Vikings, they are strong in the early slate. Obviously, this is prime time Kirk Cousins. And another fun stat: teams are 10-2-1 against the spread this year after facing the Colts, which is the position that the Vikings are in. I do like the Vikings here. I know the Giants have been strong against the cover. I know we took the Giants last week. We saw it as a good bounce back spot. But I do like Minnesota here. I mean, they obviously, epic comeback last week against the Colts. They kind of had no right winning that game after the hole they dug themselves. But, that type of win, can also be a bit of a, bit of a rallying point, for a team. And I think too, like, the Hurts injury, Philly's playing Dallas this week. Like, long shot to get that. They still have a shot at the 1 seed, right? But it's a bit of a long shot for them. But I feel like there's got to be some confidence there with just the way that they continue to find ways to win. Now they're home. I feel like this is a good spot for them to put forward a pretty dominant performance at home. What do you think?
I'm on the other side. Obviously, the Giants have been a great cover team. They're 8-2 against the spread as dogs. I kind of see this as being a letdown spot for the Vikings coming off of that huge comeback. I think it's one of those where it's like you've just done like one of the craziest things in the NFL like ever. It's kind of tough to just follow that up in a 1 o'clock game, the next Saturday. I think, we were talking about the Vikings secondary and how they've been, allowing a ton of yards to teams. And, the Giants passing offense isn't really their strong suit. It's definitely kind of getting things going on the ground, doing enough passing. But I think it does kind of help, right? Of course, if there was a good passing offense against a bad passing offense, you'd say like pound them, like hammer that, all that stuff. But I think it's also the fact that they're not being pressed and forced to just run the ball. Like there is still some security there where they can be able to throw the ball and get things done. I think the big thing that sticks out to me though is that the Vikings, as good as they have been record wise this season, their point differential is only +2. That's every game combined. They've only outscored their opponents by 2. I just think this is going to be a close game. So for that reason, I take the underdog.
Yeah, I mean, the one thing with the point differential is there's an outlier in there, which is that boys game, But I think the point is still there. It's not like they're an 11-3 team that's going and blowing everybody out. I do think from a just in terms of like their prospects for the playoffs, I think it positions them well. Because I think they'll be a lot more comfortable in close game situations, and I think probably have the ability to continue to win. Obviously, that has nothing to do with whether or not they can cover.
Yeah.
So it's a totally different situation.
Like I'm looking at their wins now, and it's like last week was a 3-point win. They beat the Jets by 5. They beat the Pats by a touchdown. They beat the Bills by 3. They beat Washington by 3. They beat Arizona by 8. They beat Miami by 8. Chicago by a touchdown. New Orleans by 3. Detroit by 4. And then Green Bay by 16. So it's like all these games are just so close. So it's like I just think that the Giants are so competitive and that they've shown that fight and they've shown they can be a good team that with me seeing this as a letdown spot, I could see the Giants winning outright, but even then, I just think it's going to be within a touchdown. So at that point, I'll take the points.
Might be able to. I might be convinced to flip to the Giants side on this. Let's mark it as a lean, and we can see where we're at.
All right.
All right. Next game, Browns and Saints. Got this marked as a weather game. Heavy winds, sub 20 degrees. Saints obviously are a dome team, coming in to play a team that's kind of built for the outdoors. I saw a stat, Dalton's got a good record in these conditions, but I think that's also more from his Cincy days, which was like 8 years ago.
And I
Uh,
think that's more in the cold than it necessarily is the wind. I'm not sure though.
and yeah. So, but it's also a little bit of like, how much can you really lean into that, just given it's been a while. And it's also like it's not just him too. It's like, can the rest of the team play in these conditions? I you know, I like the Browns in the spot. I mean, it seems like a pretty basic formula for them in this game. Run heavy. I think the pass rush can probably be pretty dominant against the Saints O line and against Dalton in particular. I think it's going to be all about just the physicality. So I do like the Browns to win and cover in this particular spot. How do you feel?
Yeah, I agree. And part of me, does worry like maybe it's just like too square of a pick or something. But then you just look at, I mean, Olave's out, Michael Thomas is of course out, Jarvis Landry was just put on the IR. So I think that
Yeah.
makes like Rashid Shaheed like their wide receiver one.
Yeah.
And he's just been like a deep threat, broken coverage guy. So it's like I don't really know. I mean, Jawan Johnson's been a great tight end for them. He's been, especially fantasy wise with how bad tight ends have been. He's been
Mhm.
great in that aspect. But it's like it just feels like a game where it has to be low scoring. I think historically these games do go very low. I think the total's at 32 and a half. And I
Yeah.
think in these instances, like especially in Cleveland, it's like these games are like, 20-point total games, that type of thing. And it should, right? It's one of those where I can tell you what should happen. I can't guarantee you that it will happen, but yeah, like they should pound the rock. I trust Nick Chubb in that spot, Kareem Hunt, even Deshaun Watson, like what they've been able to do. I mean, not that the run game or the offense in general has been very great since
Yeah.
he's come back, but it was kind of promising seeing them put together that win last week. And that was something I had said last week when we were talking about the Ravens game was like the only reason I wanted to take the Browns was like I just felt like the Browns had to win that game. Like they were just
Mhm.
due for a win like that. But everything was pointing in the Ravens' favor, and that's why we ended up taking it. But yeah, I mean, it's like with almost no passing weapons, that just makes it so tough as far as trying to throw the ball. And then if you want to just rely on the run game, it's not like Kamara's been great. As of late, I think he had like a fantastic game like 6 or 7 weeks ago, and he's been pretty cold since. So it's like matchup wise, like it really should be the Browns here. And maybe we're just square betters or something, but it just lines up for them here.
Yeah. I mean, it seems, I looked up public betting on Action Network, 63% for the Browns, 37%, obviously, um, for the Saints. So
Yeah.
definitely skewing public. Maybe not as significant a number to, you know, be concerned, but
Yeah.
that's where that's at. All right. I mean, it's a double like. So we'll mark it as such and come back to it. All right, next game, Lions laying 2.5 in Carolina. Um, Interesting spot. I mean, these are, Carolina's a team that we've been riding for a few weeks. We wrote them last week. Obviously, got burned as we talked about. The Lions are a team that we've liked. Haven't necessarily rode them every week, but we've talked about and liked them. Certainly, for most of the season. They've covered in 7 straight games. I don't think they've done that since 2011. I think it said. So they're on a heater. What do you like in this game?
This just feels like a Panther spot to me. They're back to being underdogs. Goff, he does seem to thrive in these 1 o'clock games. It's like him and Kirk Cousins. You already said the Lions have covered in 7 straight. He's still not great outside. He's 1-3 straight up, 0-4 against the spread in games that go under 35 degrees.
Mhm.
Last 20 years, Carolina is 29, 14-1 against the spread, against teams that are scoring 24 plus points a game. Since 2019, they are 9-1-1 in that spot, and they've covered 6 straight. To me, it just feels like kind of how we liked the Jets last week. And, we were right there. Like we said, we just ended up on the wrong side of the coin there. But I think this is a similar spot here. And I think taking the Panthers as underdogs is a good spot for us.
Yeah, I mean, it also just feels to me like, does this meet the formula that we were talking about earlier of like, just trying to identify, those teams a week early where
Yeah.
you've covered 7 straight. Like, I think we recognize they're not going to cover every week. It's just not going to happen,
Yeah.
So trying to identify, when that moment's going to happen. And, maybe this is kind of that right spot where the Lions are bound to not cover 1 week. Now they're going up against a team that we have been riding for several weeks, came out flat, and we got burned on them last week. But then, to your point, now the Panthers are back in a more familiar, comfortable spot of, being underdogs. They're at home. It is outdoors, not as great weather. So yeah, maybe this could be a good spot. So I'm good to lean possibly like Panthers here.
Yeah, and I think it's just kind of calling the bluff on the Lions too, where maybe they are a really good team and then they can show that here. But at the same time, I think it's just one of those where, like you're saying about, and we've kind of used the analogy all the time where you show up to a table and black has hit, X amount of times in a row. Do you take black again or do you take the red? And I just feel like a lot of people might look the Lions here under a field goal, and that's one of those. It's just like one of those numbers that kind of makes your ears perk up because I think blind resume, that type of thing. You look at these teams, just say Lions are way better. They should kill them. So, I like going against that trend there.
Despite the loss last week, Panthers are still in it for the division because everybody lost.
Yeah.
So they're in it. Similar situation. I mean, they win this week and the Bucks lose, which they probably shouldn't because they're playing the Cardinals, but they could be at top of the division. So it's right there, and they're back at home. All right. Next game, get the Bengals laying 3 against the Pats. Pats are home dogs. Robert Kraft is treating that Pats fan who was berated at that Raiders game to a VIP experience. Do you think that will be enough to propel the Patriots this week to a cover?
I do think that this is just a pat spot. I mean, right away, I think the spread looks a little small, right? I mean, Bengals are like, I think the hottest team in the league right now. Yep. And the Pats are, if you thought the Bears game was bad, I think this was truly rock bottom for the season. It's like it's like the Bears game was like rock bottom, and this was like a relapse, right? Because we kind of had things trending up a little bit. It seemed like we were covered. All of a sudden, we're back in the playoff picture when it felt like the season was over after that Chicago game. And then this happened. And that was just terrible. But it's just one of those. I mean, I really don't have too many notes outside of that. I think it's just like when you have a team that's skyrocketing up like this, you have a team that's skyrocketing down like that, and it's a 3-point spread. I feel like you have to take that underdog. And, I saw Burrow. I don't know if I can find it, or maybe it was on covers or something. But I think Burrow, he struggles against better defenses and that type of thing too. So let me see if I can find that real quick.
I mean, the note that I had that probably scared me the most out of taking the Bengals was I don't see a formula for the Pats to win. I just don't. Mm-hmm. Like I just don't see how the Patriots can cover against the Bengals. And for that reason, I love the Patriots.
Yeah.
So
okay, yeah. So I'm looking right. So even you look at last week's game, right? And Tampa was up 17 points, and then it just took it was like 3-4 straight drives with turnovers, and all of a sudden that just flipped the whole game for the Bengals. And even then, I mean, sure, the turnovers that skews the field position, less opportunity for yards, that type of thing. Burrow still was just 200 yards. He had an interception, and that's a good defense. And that defense was playing them very well to start the game. So I think we just get back to that Pats defense. And, this is a good Pats defense, and you can't overreact to one game at a time, anything like that. So, yeah, I think that this is just one of those where, like you said, you can't see a formula for the Pats to win, yet they're only 3-point underdogs. So I think that that's one of those where you just got to say, give me the underdog there. It just doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, the line smells a little bit.
And they're talking, I mean, I know the weather's not great here. They're saying, I'm reading Foxborough is going to be like 25 degrees, decent winds, that type of thing. So that's Patriot weather. I think that they can, definitely, I mean, hey, maybe we get burned. Maybe they win by a touchdown or something. But I think the Pats are going to keep this closer than a lot of people would expect after last week.
Yeah. And this is a game too. It probably will literally decide whether or not the Patriots make the playoffs, but this is a litmus test. Like, if you're not competitive, you don't win this. Like, you're not a playoff team. You know? So we are going to find out this week. It's still right there for them. They could still get in. The Jets losing last night was big. they were ahead of them anyway, but it kind of takes another team out of the equation. They're still going to need, I think, a little help from the Chargers, but the Dolphins seem to be on some loose footing themselves. So, it seems like there's still a path.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, you got to win this week. All right. Next game, we get the Bills and the Bears in Chicago, home dog. Bears are getting 8.5. What do you like on this game?
Josh Allen, he's 25, 28, and 4 against the spread against defenses allowing 20 plus. So bad defenses, I think he usually gets a bigger number on that spread, and he tends to not cover that. 1, 3, and 1 against the spread against teams allowing 24 plus points per game this season. Bills are looking to go undefeated against the spread on the road. Teams that are 65% plus win percentage versus 25% or lower since 2016 are 71, 10 and 4 or 104 and 3 against the spread. Since 2020, they're 30, 57 and 2 against the spread. The Bills are 1, 6 and 1 against the spread in their last 8. And Justin Fields is 5 and 6 against the spread versus teams over 500, I guess, in his career. I like the Bears here. We've kind of stayed away from the Bears because we've looked and we've said how, Justin Fields' play is not resulting in wins or covers. Of course, they did get the cover last week. I just think it's a big number. I think that they can keep it in there, and I think that we've seen it enough out of the Bills where they get these bigger numbers against these kind of shittier teams, and it just I don't even know if it necessarily constitutes as letting them hang around, but it lets them stay within the number.
Yeah, Bears are 5 and 8 against the spread, or Justin Fields 5 and 8 against the spread. Josh Allen 5, 8 and 1. So, yeah, I think. I think I like the Bears here. I mean, to me, it just feels like a very similar spot to, the position they were in last week. Playing a good dominant team. They're not good enough to win the game per se, but they're good enough to hang around and probably better than what the number is. Or maybe the number is just about right, but they have the ability to get inside it, and with somebody as dynamic as Fields, they're going to continue to play him, down the stretch late into the game. So as long as they're kind of within 2 scores, we will continue to be in a backdoor position the entire way. So I think this is a good spot. Take the points, home dog, with a team with that caliber of talent, that quarterback. I think it's a good spot for us.
Yeah.
So, all right. Next game, Titans, Texans. Titans are laying 3 at home. I was reading this week, they are officially the most heavily injured team in the league right now. The Titans are.
I believe that.
Yep. Tannehill's out. He's done. Malik Willis and a quarterback. I think he's played 1 game. It was against the Chiefs. They did cover. I'm not sure.
He beat the Texans.
Oh, he did.
Yeah.
Oh, so he's played 2 games.
Yeah, so they beat the Texans 17-0. That was mostly on the back of Derrick Henry at 219 rushing yards, 2 touchdowns. That's pretty much the norm for Derrick Henry against Houston as well.
Yeah, but did he play? He's played 2 games this year.
Yeah, he started those 2, and then he's been in at different times when Tannehill's gotten hurt and had to come off and stuff.
Got it. Wait, because I'm looking on Action Network. It says he's 1-0 against the spread this year. But that wouldn't be right if he quarterbacked 2 games.
No, he definitely played that Texans game.
Unless did he come in? Maybe Tannehill started.
No, he started it.
Weird. Let's see, Titans, ESPN. I'm just going to their schedule just to take a look.
Football Reference has his QB record at 1-1, so they acknowledge the 2 starts.
Okay, all right, interesting. All right, Action Network. They gotta step their shit up. Yeah, but even in that game, they definitely did ride the back of Derrick Henry.
Yeah, that's what he does. I mean, Derrick Henry averages like 200 yards a game against the Texans. Yeah. Totally. Another thing that stuck out though is that this is Vrabel's first 4-game losing streak.
Mm-hmm.
I think you just got to hold your nose and you got to take the Titans.
Despite the fact that the last 2 weeks, Texans have played incredibly hard. They've covered against both KC and Dallas. They've been in a position to win both games. They took KC to overtime. Um, I I mean they've been right there in the mix.
Yeah, I think the big thing, and maybe it's just like a mental thing for me though, is like those are like huge spreads, and of course they still played them close. It's not like they covered those spreads, that type of thing. But I
Yeah.
do think that there is something to it, like maybe just somewhat of a, these are two teams that were top of their conferences, trying to win their division, that type of thing, and they're coming in against like the shitty Texans, where the Titans have to win this game.
Mm-hmm.
Because like the Jags are like legitimately on their heels, and especially now that the Jags have played on Thursday and already won, that's a half game they've already gained on them now. And things are shaping up that it could come down to that Week 18 game, Jags versus Titans, to decide the division, and could also decide if you make the playoffs or not. So I think that there's more urgency here from the Titans as well. And I think a big thing that for me is that Traylon Burks is practicing full this week. He's back, and watching these Titans games the last couple of weeks, I've personally felt they've really been missing him. Just like an actual dynamic playmaker, not Nick Westbrook Akine or Robert Woods, who's been terrible, that type of thing. So it's like I think that Traylon Burks coming back should give them a boost. And I don't know. I mean, I really have a hard time seeing Vrabel dropping 5 straight, especially against a team that he typically dominates. Derrick Henry dominates, that type of thing. So I think they
Yeah.
could follow a similar script here. Nico Collins, he just got put on the IR. I don't know if Brandon Cooks is going to be playing at all. I just see this being a tough spot. I think that we're kind of getting some value here on the Titans because of the skid that they've been on.
Yeah. All right, you might have talked me into it. I mean, I think you said it right. It's definitely a hold your nose and take it,
Mhm.
type of thing. But I think I might be willing to do that. Yeah, I mean this is like I don't think there's any question at this point that Week 18 game against the Jags will decide who wins this division. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
But it could be interesting next week because the Jags, they play the Texans, and the Texans like give the Jags fits. So I mean that could just be like a huge
Titans are
spoiler spot
playing
for them.
Titans are playing the Cowboys.
Yeah. And
Mm.
but that could just be a huge, because like it's on like the Jags have to win. It's really on them to get themselves back into it. So they're saying it on the broadcast too. It's like you have to show up to that game and you have to take it seriously, because
Yep.
this is a team that gives you fits, and you
Yeah.
can't let them slip up, because that's what we've seen, right? Like with KC and Dallas. But then you look back and it's like they were 3-point dogs to Washington. They lost by 13. They were 14.5-point dogs to Miami, and they lost by 15, but that was also when Miami benched everybody after the first half, and they started crawling back into it. And then the week before the Dallas game, they were 7.5-point dogs to Cleveland. They lost by 13 there. That's when they had a million turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like a total defensive showing from Cleveland. So it's like, and I tweeted that last week. It's like the Titans or the Texans, they're really good at putting a scare into teams, but they're not able to actually
I don't
win
win.
anything.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, yeah, I think those last 2 weeks, though, I think the big thing that stands out to me is that it was 17.5 points, 14.5 points. And I think it's just they're catching these good teams sleepwalking. But I think it's a different spot here with the Titans, because I don't think they can't really afford to sleepwalk.
Yeah. All right. Titans it is. Next game, Chiefs at home laying 10 against Seattle. Seattle's lost 5 straight against the spread. Kansas City. Let's see. When does this date back? I don't know how long this dates back, but 28, 35, and 1 is a favorite of 3.5 or more. I think this is under Mahomes at quarterback. 17, 6, and 1 as a favorite of 3 or less. So obviously closer games, much better against the spread. Larger spreads, not as good. Worth noting, Seattle has lost Tyler Lockett. He's got a broken finger.
That's
So
right. I
he's
forgot
out.
about that.
Yep. That's a big loss. Lockett and Geno has been that's been a great connection. Marquise Goodwin has stepped up for them in these types of spots, but he's also questionable this week. I don't know if that's like he's going to play, but they're just marking him as questionable tag, or if he's like, legitimately in jeopardy of like missing the game. I know Kenneth Walker, it sounds like, is playing, but I think they activated another guy or two. So there may be some concerns about like just his sustainability in this game. But it seems like they're pretty banged up. They're definitely reeling. What do you think with this one?
It's kind of a tough read because it's like, I see like I'm looking at things like Pete Carroll's 0-6 straight up and has lost 4 straight against the spread since 2021 on extended rest.
Hmm.
This is Geno Smith's first 5 game against the spread losing streak in his career. Seahawks' first 5 game against the spread losing streak since the end of 2004. Seattle's last 6 game single season against the spread losing streak was 2000. They lost 6 straight. But then you also just see where it's like, Mahomes, he's not great against the spread in general. He hasn't been great against the spread at home. That's everything. He does have the good record, this late in the season straight up and
Yeah.
everything. I kind of lean the points here, the plus 10. I feel like Ken Walker could be a great addition back. I still think that DK Metcalf physically is a good matchup against
Yep.
Kansas City. So it's like I feel like, maybe it's just one of those where, yeah, Seattle's been playing bad. They've been skidding after a really hot start to the season, but I think this is one of those where you kind of grab them back and you see 10, plus 10. It's a big number.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. It is a big number. And again, even though Seattle hasn't covered the last 5 weeks, like they've overall body of work, competitive team, good football team, um, probably out of the mix in the NFC at this point. I mean, they still have a path, but
Mahomes is a favorite of 3.5 or more in his career is 28, 35, and 1 against the spread. And at home, he's 21, 23, and 1 against the spread.
I read that stat off.
Well, oh, you did?
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, I got the article. I got the Action Network article up right now. I'm just running down it.
All right, let's mark we'll mark the Seahawks on this one. And then I think it'll probably just come down to confidence pick at the end. If it stacks up against some of the other likes we have. All right, next game, got the Ravens at home laying 7 against the Falcons. Ritter back in at QB. Snoop Huntley. I had no idea that's what they called him. He's back under center for the Ravens. Interesting note, I think I read on Twitter earlier today about Ritter. His yards thrown over underline for this week, I think, is like 140 yards. It's the lowest of the season for a quarterback.
I believe that.
What's that?
I believe that.
Yeah, not good. Like it's lower than Malik Willis. Like
Malik Willis sometimes doesn't get a prop. So I feel like maybe that's like a skewed thing because it's like I think sometimes they're like we actually don't know what to set it at.
Malik Willis he's the loophole.
Yeah, it's like sometimes you'll see that where like they just won't be listed because it's like we can only go so low.
Yeah.
Because it's like what if we put it at 90, then that could just end up being like a steal for
Yeah.
bettors and that type of thing. So
That's funny.
yeah, Malik Willis might be like the exception to the rule.
It'd be funny to listen to Malik Willis and Desmond Ritter talk shit to each other about that very topic.
Yeah.
Because Ritter would be like, they don't even set a line for you. You're so bad.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny. Also with the Ravens, they lost Devin DuVernay in practice this week.
Yeah.
It sounded like kind of a fluke injury. I mean, it's an offense, like they don't really have anything left to begin with. And then, you lose a guy like DuVernay and it's, you just go from bad to worse. I don't know. Seems like a lot of points for two teams that just don't seem very good right now. And have, kind of two subpar quarterbacks playing under center. Ravens are at home, but I don't know. What do you think on this one?
I lean the Falcons here. I watched a lot of the Falcons game last week because I had a Drake London prop. So, and Drake London's like one of my guys. So I was watching a lot. I really didn't think Ritter looked as bad as maybe his stats were. I think it was more that he just wasn't being asked to do too much. I think really the only mistakes that really stood out was there was really one consistent issue where I felt like he was holding the ball too long, especially on like, crossing routes and stuff like that. Like there was one instance where he was running with Drake London. Drake London's started on the left side, he's sprinting to the right sideline, and he had Drake like wide open, but he just held it for like half a second too long. That allowed the cornerback that was chasing London to kind of make a pursuit to kind of cut that off, and he deflected it. And then a similar thing happened in the end zone later on where It was going to London again. They ended up drawing a pass interference call that got him on the one, but I didn't watch him and think like, oh my God, he's playing like shit. It was more just like, hey, he's a rookie that's not being asked to do too much. And
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
already a pretty low passing volume offense to begin with. And I'm trying to what was the score to that game? Because they were making a drive at the end and London just fumbled it. He just had it like punched out from behind him. And but it was still like a pretty decent game. I'm pulling it up right now. Who'd they play? They played the Saints. Yeah, they lost 18 or 21-18. And I'm looking at a lot of these scores, especially the last five, and they've been playing teams close. They lost by 3, lost by 3, lost by 6, lost by 3, lost by 10. And these weren't necessarily great teams that they're going against, but yeah, the Ravens have just looked so bad that it's hard to take them as this big of favorites.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
could see this being a 6-point win, a 7-point win. But I think the Falcons, they can keep this much closer than that. And I think that they could maybe come out of this with a win if they're able to dominate it on the ground. I mean, Tyler Algier, I believe it's pronounced, he's putting up a ton of yards lately. He's been, really good. I mean, it hasn't been, he's not receiving it. He's not catching any passes. He's not scoring any
Yeah.
touchdowns, but he's been putting up, 60, 70, 80 yards. So it's like, I feel like the Falcons, they have a formula to stick to, and it allows them to kind of keep things low scoring and maybe squeak out some
No,
wins or at least keep it close. So I like the Falcons inside of a touchdown here.
they're getting Cordero Patterson more involved again. They've kind of been ramping that up the last few weeks. I know they were trying to ease him back in a little bit, but so yeah, I mean, I agree. I was leaning Falcons, coming into the call. So I like that pick.
Yeah, and I think most importantly, it just feels like this is going to be a really low scoring game. So it's hard to take a favorite, a 7-point favorite in that
Yeah,
spot.
yeah, that's true. That's true. All right. Next one, we get the 49ers laying 7 against the Commanders. 49ers are at home. Interesting stat on the 49ers playing back-to-back Pacific time zone games. Shanahan 21-11 straight up, 20-11-1 ATS when San Francisco plays in the Pacific time zone after playing PST in the previous game as well. So good trend there. I mean, they've been playing well. Brock Purdy 2-0 against the spread. They've been playing pretty well. I know the Commanders have been playing hard. They've been playing tough. Obviously didn't get the cover last week. We talked about it earlier in the context of the Giants-Vikings game. They were right there at the goal line with a chance to at least give themselves a chance to cover. And they're still very much in the mix. No doubt, I think Commanders will come out and play hard. I think it's just a question of do they have enough juice to hang with this 49er team that I think we're seeing the formula for this team. It's that defense is going to dominate. Threat with they have the ability to run the shit out of it, and Purdy's doing just enough. He's doing what he's got to do. He's not turning it over. He's finding guys. Last week was a big week for Kittle. It sounds like Debo's going to play this week. Who do you like in this?
This is kind of a tough read. Part of me feels like part of me wants to take Washington, but then I can also just it's been tough. It's tough to go against the Niners after watching them these past couple of weeks. Big note: Chase Young is making his debut against the Niners. He's back this week. I could see this being a game where maybe Brock Purdy is like, oh wait, you were the last pick of the draft, and you're
Yeah.
not the replacement for Garoppolo or
Oh
Trey
yeah.
Lance or anything like that. This could be maybe a come back down to earth game for him. And he hasn't necessarily been great. It's just that he's doing his job and he's getting the ball to where it needs to be, that type of thing. I do like the way Purdy looks when he throws it. He does have a lot of zip on the ball, that type of thing. But part of me just leans Washington with the points here. If this was like a 4-point spread, I'd say, give me the Niners. But at a touchdown, I just feel like the Commanders are capable of just keeping it within that. But I could also just see this being like a straight up 7-point win for the Niners.
Yeah. Yeah. This was a bit of a stay away for me. I didn't really have a strong feeling either way. I do feel like I could make a pretty compelling case for both sides.
Exactly.
And for that reason, to me, it feels like a stay away game. I
Yeah.
don't feel like I have a strong enough read or
Yeah, like
opinion.
I have a harder time seeing it get out of hand, become larger than a touchdown game,
Yeah.
than I do it just being like back and forth close and
Yeah.
that type
Yeah.
of thing. But I'm not necessarily confident on either side of that.
But then I also see the way that the 49ers defense can take over a game.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, I'm like, oh shit, what if, can they do that here? So, all right. Next game is an interesting one to handicap. You get the Cowboys at home laying 5.5 against the Eagles. Obviously the Eagles coming in. Gardner Minshew is going to be a quarterback. No Jalen Hurts with the shoulder injury. That certainly has massive implications for our semifinal matchup
Yeah.
in the Bedford Fantasy Football League. Very unfortunate for me. We'll see if I can still find a way, but the reality still exists that even with Minshew under center, Philly's still got a load of talent on offense. They're in a dome. That defense is superb. Dallas has looked sloppy the last couple of weeks. Obviously, had to grind one out against the Texans, and then last week really blew it against the Jaguars and lost straight up. I don't know. I was still leaning Eagles with the points. And it's not meant to discredit Jalen Hurts by any stretch. I mean, obviously, I think they were favored by 1.5 or around 2 points. Before he was declared doubtful. But I still like the Eagles with the 5.5 points with Minshew on the center. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I love the Eagles here, and it's not really too deep of an analysis. It's actually, I mean, like I actually like them more. I'm more likely to take them with Minshew than I would with Hurts, just because if it was Hurts, I'd be looking at it and say this feels like upset alert, that type of thing. But then, when I see people on Twitter talking about, oh, you can still get the Cowboys at -3, do that when it was just rumors that Hurts might be out, that type of thing. That
Mhm.
screams that you got to take the underdog, because that just makes I always go back to that Cowboys Vikings game. Dak
Absolutely.
was out. We took the Vikings, and people, when people think that they have the scoop that they beat Vegas, and oh my God, can you believe that I got these 2 points shaved off the spread for free? That type of thing. I
Yeah.
just feel like it always goes the other way. And Mitchell, I mean, is like against the spread and straight up records aren't great, but he's proven to be more than capable of a starting quarterback. And
Yeah.
he's playing on some bad Jaguars teams too. That'll definitely skew those stats in terms of winning games and being able to cover the spread. But yeah, I mean, I like the Eagles here with Minshew, especially at 5.5. I think that they could still go out there and
Well,
win.
a little bit of a Mike Leach memorial game.
Yeah,
Uh,
that too.
it's for Minshew too. He I don't know if you saw the video of him talking at the memorial service. Pretty I think he even said, he only spent about 6 to 9 months with Mike Leach while he was in college, but couldn't say enough about just the impact that he had on his
Yeah.
life, his mentality.
I
So
mean, even that. I mean, you're the quarterback. I mean, there's a picture of Mike Leach. He's got the mustache on, the fake mustache when
yeah,
he
yeah,
was
yeah, yeah, yeah,
quarterback, that type of
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
But yeah, I
Um,
mean, I think it's just one of those where I think the Eagles. This is why you want to get a good backup quarterback, because of things like this. Like, you
yeah.
don't want this to derail your season. They want to still maintain the momentum that they have and keep it going. I really think that they can go down there and still win it outright. So I love them as 5.5 point dollars. I'll take all the
Dallas
points that
Goedert,
Vegas wants to give us back.
Dallas Goedert playing.
I
Goddard.
believe he's been activated. I don't know if he's playing, but I know he's at least back to like his practice window maybe has been open. I'm not totally sure.
Um, what's this? Why this Eagles receiver says he'll have a big game if Gardner Minshew starts versus the Cowboys.
Who was it, like Quez Watkins or something?
Oh, it's Goddard.
Oh, nice.
He had the best game of his career with 105 receiving yards, 2 touchdowns, in the Eagles' 33-18 win over the New York Jets on December 5th, 2021. Critical victory and the Eagles' chance to make the playoffs. Minshew was filling in for Hurts, who had sprained his ankle that week or the week before against the Giants. Interesting. Yeah. All right. Good. Good to know. I mean, whether or not Goddard plays, it's like they still got AJ Brown. They
Yeah.
still got Devontae Smith. Quez Watkins has been great. Miles Sanders. I mean, they didn't use Miles Sanders a lot last week, but he's had some huge weeks. I mean, this is a complete football team, So I like him. Let's mark it. All right, next game, another Memorial game. We got the Steelers at home laying 2.5 against the Raiders. Franco Harris obviously passed away this week. Whether or not this Pittsburgh team is good enough to actually honor his memory with a victory, I do not know. I have my doubts. I do, you said this earlier, like, sometimes you look at a spread and you just say, like, there's no way that that team should be favored.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that's a sign to fade them. And that's the reaction I had when I saw the Steelers were favored by 2.5 against the Raiders. Like, I just don't know based on what I've seen from the Steelers this year. I mean, yes, they won last week against the Panthers, who we took. But that was a spot with, like, the Panthers were a favorite. And we kind of had that, that same post-game read of they shouldn't be, favored against anybody. It's kind of how I feel about the Steelers here. It just, I was very shocked to see that they were favored by 2.5 against the Raiders. I lean Raiders here, but I don't know what you thought.
I agree. Yeah, I think just like you said, this was another one that did stick out to me. Is just I feel like you got to take the underdog in the spot. I just I think that these are two different teams that are maybe like they're both bad, but I think that the Raiders are maybe a little more motivated. They have a little bit more to play for because the Steelers, they're still in a little bit of a rebuilding phase. The Raiders, they had the high hopes and they had such a bad start to the season. But I kind of like the Raiders coming off of, the momentum that they're able to build just off of that insane play, right? I was saying how I felt like the Vikings were in for a letdown spot, but that's because they had to like literally just grind away at a 30-point lead to get that back, where all of a sudden it was like, okay, let's, mentally prepare for overtime. Oh shit, the ball's in my hands. And they take it to the end zone. The game's over. We won. And I think that that's a momentum building play right there. Yeah, I mean, I just, Derek Carr against Kenny Pickett. I think it's just one of those, I'm the Max Crosby and Chandler Jones on that terrible Pittsburgh offensive line, Devontae Adams, all this stuff. I feel like the Raiders should be winning this game outright.
Yeah, I agree. And, again, like that, they got a tough final 2 weeks of the season. They got to play the Niners and the Chiefs. They have to win this football game.
Mm-hmm.
They have to. They still have a chance. 6-8. If they can get to 7-8 this week, then they'll be able to leapfrog the Jets. They'll be right there with the Jaguars, who are going to be going, tit for tat with the Titans for the division lead anyway. We're obviously going to see what happens with the Patriots against the Bengals, but there's a path, and I mean they're going to play the Chiefs, who they beat. Did they beat the Chiefs?
The Raiders?
Yeah.
No, remember, I think they went for two with like time.
They went for two. Yeah, they went for two, but I mean they were in.
But I mean, they were right there. Yeah,
right there. They were in a position. Yeah, they lost 30-29. So there's still a glimmer of hope for these guys. So they are going to be motivated. So I like the Raiders here. I do.
Yeah.
I'm sure I'll be cursing Derek Carr in our text this weekend, but it is what it is. All right, next game, got the Dolphins and Packers. Dolphins are at home. They're laying 4 against Green Bay. You're a resident Dolphins fan, resident Tua fan. What's your read on this game?
It's kind of tough because like I feel like the Dolphins there, this kind of feels like a spot. Take the Dolphins. People are kind of getting a little down on them just based off of recent performance, that type of thing. Mm-hmm. But also the Packers, it's like the Packers have this path to the playoffs.
Yeah.
And like they have to win out and everything has to go perfect. But then at the same time, it's kind of been with Aaron Rodgers this year. Whenever we think, oh, it's same old Rodgers, here we go, right? Slow start, he'll bounce back, or this type of thing. Oh, he always dominates the Lions, he'll kill them. It hasn't gone that way. So it's like, I mean, would it shock me if the Packers won this one outright? No. I mean, they've been playing pretty well. I think A.J. Dillon, he was, I mean, I was so pissed. He came off for concussion protocol, and then he was out of concussion protocol like by the end of the game. And I had like his receiving props, and he hit the first one, and then I needed him to get like 1-2 more receptions. I would have made a ton of money, and he didn't get them. But I don't. I mean, it's tough, right? Because Miami, they've kind of gone against some interesting game plans, right? I mean, they played the Niners, who I feel like kind of figured some things out with how to disrupt that timing on the offense. And
Yep.
then they played the Chargers, who, they kind of did the same thing. They were kind of an undermanned defense and they weren't as talented as the Niners defense, but the scheme was very good. They were dropping those guys back in coverage, really covering that middle of the field, that type of thing. So yeah, it's kind of a tough read. I think if anything, it's more of a stay away from me. I mean, they've definitely been competitive, Miami, right? They were competitive last week. They could have beat the Bills, that type of thing. It's just they had a small road bump with San Francisco and LA. I think that they can bounce back. So I think I like the Dolphins, but I could also be talked into the Packers. And either way, I'm very 50-50 on it.
Yeah, I'm 50-50 too. I think it's a stay away game.
Yeah.
All right.
I think it's an over game. I think that's a game that goes over.
Yeah, probably. All right. Broncos, Rams. Rams are at home. They're getting 2.5. Russell Wilson playing?
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know. I didn't even bother to look. I mean, this is a sad football game. Sad.
Well, for what it's worth, I like the Broncos a lot.
I figured that. Yeah, I mean, I can see a pretty easy get. You said it last week too. It was like the Baker Mayfield thing with the Rams. Your comment last week was like he has that ability. Like he'll come in, have a good first game, or like come out of nowhere, rally the team. But then you start to settle in and you start to kind of see what you got,
Yeah.
and the net return is always negative. So I can see it's probably just a continuation of that. And this feels like probably a spot where a dominant defense like the Broncos and the way that they've continued to play strong, they can feast a little bit on this Rams team.
Yeah, I mean, Russell Wilson was playing very well against the Chiefs. He had 3 touchdowns, 23-36, 247 yards, 4 carries for 57 yards, and then of course he got the concussion. But he's had the week off. It sounds like he's back. He's good to go. That type of thing. So I like Wilson in this matchup. I think that especially with that defense too, I think that they'll be able to just smother that Rams offense, and it could just be like a 17-7 win or something like that. But yeah, I mean, I think this is a good spot for the Broncos to get a win.
All right, noted. Mark them as a like. Next game, Bucks laying 7.5 in Arizona against the Cardinals. This feels like a stay away. Everything to me screams like, the fact that the Cardinals are now on Trace McSorley. They're now talking about Cliff Kingsbury could be walking away, he could be fired. At the end of the season, should be fired. If he walks away, it's a whole like you can't fire me, I quit type of thing. But at the same time, it's like this Bucks team has just been so bad. It's so bad. I don't know how we can lay 7.5. I just don't.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's tough to talk yourself into doing that. It's kind of like I was saying against for I don't even remember what game I was saying, but it's like I can tell you what should happen. I can't promise you that will happen, but like the Bucks should kill them. It's Trace McSorley making his first start. We saw how the offense looked with him running it. It's just, I mean, it's brutal. But I mean, at the same time, no tape on him. Who knows? Maybe he can sneak something out. And yeah, it has been so bad for the Bucks that I mean, I think that there's enough games on here that we like that we should just leave it alone.
Yep. All right. Last one. Chargers and Colts. Colts are home, catching 4.5. And it's Nick Foles under center. No, it's another stay away game for me.
I love the Colts with Nick Foles here. I think that they're gonna win it outright.
Interesting. That's wow, it's a big claim.
Not a 4.5 point dog. It's not. It's not that crazy.
I think it was a combination of like, I mean, 4.5's not like nothing either, but very you said that with a lot of conviction, a lot of confidence. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just one of those where it is kind of strange. I mean, I can understand they wanted to see what they had and um, Sam Ellinger before, committing to getting a quarterback next year, that type of thing. So, I mean, I think he definitely deserved the opportunity to get some starts in the middle of the season, but I think it's also just one of those. It's like, I mean, you can't go back to Matt Ryan. I mean, he just
No,
he just blew his second, massive lead in his career.
that's
Uh, that type of thing. You can't go back to him after that. That's like a broken team type of thing. But I don't know. It's just one of those where like Nick Foles does seem to kind of have that magic around him, and this seems like that type of spot where he steps in. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just another one too, where I think people are going to be so quick to overlook the Colts here and just say, "Oh yeah, put all my
yeah.
money on the Chargers," that type of thing. That I kind of just lean the underdog in that spot, especially as home dogs.
Yeah. Okay. Um, all right. Noted. Let's go back through. We didn't pass on a lot of games. So we'll have some decisions to make. All right, we liked Giants +4 against the Vikings. That was one originally. I was on the Vikings side. You were definitely on the Giants. I think by the end of it, I felt compelled enough that I'd be willing to make the switch. We were both on the Browns -3. Panthers +2.5. I think felt like a good spot. Panthers back in an underdog position. And again, just in the spirit of that theme we were talking about of all good runs do come to an end. Lions are at 7. Trying to get ahead of it. Patriots we liked +3 against the Bengals. They're at home. Just feels like a good spot for the Pats. Good defense can give Joe Burrow some fits. Bears +8.5. Bills, Josh Allen have struggled a little bit to cover against teams with a big number. And I think with Justin Fields, certainly gives them, like he did last week against the Eagles, the back door just seems to always be open. Titans -3 against the Texans. It's a must-win spot. They're banged up. Don't really have anybody left, but hard to see Vrabel drop 5 straight.
And at the end of the day, they still have Derrick Henry.
They still have Derrick Henry. Seahawks +10 against the Chiefs. Chiefs have a terrible record with spreads as a favorite of 3.5 or more. We like the Falcons +7 against the Ravens. These are 2 backup quarterbacks. 2 bad teams, big number, low scoring game. Passed on the 49ers and Commanders. We both love the Eagles +5.5. Both seem to like the Raiders +2.5. Again, another game, with a team like the Steelers, who just don't seem like they should be a favorite against anybody. Passed on the Dolphins and Packers. Broncos -2.5. You made a compelling case for that over the Rams. Bucks and Cardinals were passing, and then the Colts was your money line pick of the week. 4.5 against the Chargers. Colts are at home with Nick Foles under center. Anything on that list that just jumps out at you and you feel like is a must take?
I think Raiders should be on our card.
Yep. Okay.
That's like our toxic
Yep.
significant other, that type of thing.
It
But
is. Yep.
I think that they should be on our card, though. I think that's a spot that we were just talking about how we need to be better at identifying these spots. I think this is a good opportunity to try and test that out.
Yep.
That's everything. But I also just like our arguments for the Raiders in that spot, anyways. So
I
think that's a team that should make it.
I do like the Eagles pick.
I was gonna say, I think Raiders and Eagles should just be 1-2 on the card.
Yep.
Let me just write that down.
I think the more we talk about it, I think I do like Titans -3.
That was gonna be my next one. I was just gonna, backs against the wall. I think we got to take the team
Yep.
like that.
All right, pinch your nose. I think I can get down with your Broncos and Colts picks too. I think those are the other 2. I actually might like those better than some of the earlier games that we had talked about. I think there's enough question marks around, Browns -3, I think I could probably get down with. Maybe Giants +4. But I like I like the theories behind the Broncos and the Colts
Yeah,
picks.
Browns -3 almost feels too easy.
Maybe. Yeah, which we talked about. I think we said it, like, is it too square of a pick?
Yeah.
And maybe it is. Maybe that should scare us off of it.
Yeah, and like I mean, the squares do win sometimes.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
it doesn't mean that the Saints are a lock or anything, but it's just weighing it up against everything else. It feels too easy. It feels like if I had to pick the game that's gonna go wrong for me, it would be that probably.
That way. Yeah. Yep.
And it's like I said, I was like everything points to the Browns winning, and that should just raise a red flag or something.
Yep.
I do like the Broncos pick. Like I said, I do like the Colts as well. I'm trying to see what other ones do we have. Um, I think Falcons and Seahawks and Bears and those picks. I think those are more just like like these would be fun underdogs to hit, and I feel like maybe you know at least one of them will hit. Maybe two out of the three. Maybe it'll go 3 for 3. But it's one of those where maybe we just pick the wrong one or something. It's not my highest confidence there. Uh, Pats, I like to kind of stay away from the Pats on our card all year. They're just, I do think that everything screams Pat spot there. I really like that spot there, but I don't like getting burned by them on our card. So
Yeah, I don't either.
I'm very, very happy we passed on it last week because that just would have been.
Oh my God. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? If we had taken them, if that was our last pick instead of the Giants,
Yeah.
and that put us into an 0-5 spot, I would have had to get in the car and just go for a drive. I don't know if I ever would have come home. I don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So do you want to do Broncos and Colts then?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I can get into those. Yeah. All right. So our card, just to recap. So we're gonna go. We got the Titans -3 at home against the Texans. We've got the Eagles +5.5 on the road against the Cowboys. The Raiders +2.5 on the road against Pitt. Broncos laying 2.5 on the road against the Rams. And then the Colts getting 4.5 at home against the Chargers.
Damn, I just checked my because my friends and I we essentially do a super contest amongst ourselves, so picking 5 spreads a week.
Yep.
They don't have the updated Titans spreads. They still have the opening line at -7.
Wow.
So I'll have to pick something different.
Jesus.
They want no part of that. So
No, not 7. Seven's a little high.
yeah, I can get the Broncos out of pick them though. That's nice.
Oh, there you go. Take that. Oh yeah. If you're gonna take them at 2.5, you're absolutely gonna take them to pick them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Those are our 5. I'll get these in.
All right. Cool.
Can you put my parlay in too?
Yeah, I'll get that in.
All right. Cool.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right. Good stuff. Enjoy your party with Gianna's family. And I just sent a note to the group text, said you'll be out there soon.
Oh, nice. And, oh yeah, and I got something coming for Cleo. It's probably going to be like first week of January though. It's a long shipping time, but
all right,
something nice.
Mom and Pop sent you home with hopefully they wrapped it and didn't like open.
Yeah, I have a box.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've kept it under the tree.
There you go. Very nice.
Don't want to spoil it for
him. Yeah. Shit. All right.
Yeah.
I'll talk to you later.
All right, I'll see you.
All right, see you.